but that's sort of what it was born out of, is like how to get our crew back to work, how to do something creative, and how to try to tell a story given the restrictions of COVID. Can we just tell a story?
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. Today's episode takes us behind the scenes of director Sam Levinson's new drama, Malcolm and Marie. The film takes place as Malcolm returns home with his girlfriend Marie following a celebratory movie premiere. But their evening takes a turn as revelations about their relationships begin to surface, testing the strength of their love. In addition to Malcolm and Marie, Mr. Levinson's directorial credits include the feature films Assassination Nation and Another Happy Day, and episodes of the series Euphoria. Mr. Levinson spoke with director Derek Cianfrance about filming Malcolm and Marie in front of a virtual audience. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
All right, I guess this is my cue. Hey, I'm Derek Cianfrance. I'm here with Sam Levinson to talk about his new movie, Malcolm and Marie. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Dude, it's my honor. Sam and I have just met each other, but we've been aware of each other's work. I think the film that you made is so brave and really like a pioneering film. You were the first person, really, I think, to figure out how to shoot in the pandemic. But I think a lot's been talked about that. But I want to ask you to start specifically on how does it feel to release a movie in this pandemic?
Good. I mean, look, I think like it's. I'm so grateful to Netflix to have the ability to go shoot a movie with 22 people in the middle of June during lockdown and somehow find a way to get it done and to a distributor that can reach like 200 million people. It's mind blowing. So I can't get over that fact. But releasing any movie is always like a strangely sort of nerve-wracking and kind of, I don't know. I always go through like a weird postpartum thing. Do you have that at all?
Of course, man. Of course. I mean, I finished up my last thing over the summer. It was showing on HBO as I was still editing it. And when it was done, it was like, the culmination of 2 years of straight work, 7 days a week, dreaming about it, to just being done and being out there in the world. And then there's this moment of, well, what is my purpose in life? And then,
right.
and then finding, and then searching for purpose, and you can't always find your purpose right away. It's like fishing. You don't know when you're going to get the fish, and you got to keep your pole out there to find the muse. But I thought your movie was a lot about the muse too. So anyway, but yeah, is that how you're feeling? Are you feeling without purpose, or your purpose is to market it right now?
Yeah, well, which is like way harder and not what I'm like built for, It's just because it's also funny, like I feel like a lot of the times you're talking about the film with your crew and your producers and your kind of collaborators, but you're always inside of it. So it's always, there's like that moment where suddenly you now have to step outside and kind of look at it from an objective kind of lens, which is always an odd kind of experience in that regard. And then have to sort of explain it or sort of spell, like I never think about log lines really, or those things, or it's also, I write from like kind of an emotional standpoint. So I'm never thinking about it from like what's the theme of this thing or that, and so then suddenly I kind of have to take a step back and analyze it in a new way during those things, which is always interesting.
Yeah, what I've always found is like the testing period or screenings, whatever you want to say, where you screen your films for your friends and family and sometimes for audiences, is a great learning curve to learn how to talk about your film. Usually when I
Right.
would enter those and try to get up to talk to people about my films, it's just mush. I mean, I'm too close to it. I have no idea. And in that time, you kind of start formulating your stand-up routine.
Right. Exactly. No, that's 100% what it is. You go like, you'll say something and then you'll be like, oh, that's what it is. But it's always like you're saying like 10 things, 12 different things. Then you kind of go, oh, maybe that's what describes it best. It's
Yes.
such a weird, I don't know, unknowable process in some way that, I don't know. It's always a fascinating thing. And then there's just, it goes out into the world and then you're kind of going, it is that what now sort of feeling of, okay, who am I? You
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. The secret's out. There's no more mystery. Here it is. It's going to be judged. It's going to be seen or not seen. And
Right.
now you got to go back to square one. But you have a lot going on, right?
Well,
True.
we're starting season 2 of Euphoria again, a year after we were essentially shut down from it, which was kind of the impetus to actually go make this film in the first place. Is we've been prepping a full season of Euphoria for probably 6 months at least, and I was writing for probably about a year, and all through prep, and then on the Friday before we were supposed to start shooting is when we were shut down because of the pandemic. And so, we, immediately I'm like just eager to work, but at the same time, I'm completely relieved because I was terrified to go into the world with a crew that felt, and shoot this big sort of sprawling, show with all the locations and things. So that was sort of and it's and that feeling when it's like you've got something that's going and no one ever believes that anything's going to go, so you're calling like your DP, you're calling your production and be like, no, this show's going to go, we're going to start shooting, HBO has set the date, and then suddenly people don't take a job because they know that this is coming up. And I had this feeling of like how long is this going to last, how what is my crew doing? It's Zendaya would call me and say, what's going, how long do you think we're going to be shut down for? And I'm a bit apocalyptic at times, so I was like, I think for a while, but that's sort of what it was born out of, is like how to get our crew back to work, how to do something creative, and how to try to tell a story given the restrictions of COVID. Can we just tell a story? Can we make a movie in this period of time that still has a certain degree of scope and I don't know,
So
that, yeah.
was it that it sounds like you felt responsible for the family of people that were all working on this with you? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. It's also too, like, just as a writer, I go, well, if I can figure out a way to tell a story sort of, and we can do it safely, and we can maybe, and it started off very small, where it's like, what if we put our own money into it? And what if we design a thing where it's like, because we don't know how long the pandemic's gonna last, so we wanted to give all of our key crew members and stuff ownership in the movie, so that if it sold, they were able to kind of, share in the profits of it, and just kind of go make a movie as like a small family. And that's kind of what the driving sort of force was behind it. Is it just felt like it also felt like if we can learn how to do it safely, we could take those sort of findings or guidelines and sort of share them with the rest of the community.
Hmm. I was intrigued and early on in the film, in the titles, honestly, when you included the entire titles, every person that worked on the titles, at least that's what it seemed like, in these bricks of like a wall of credits. Can you talk to me about your decision to do that in the opening credits?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately the movie at its core is about acknowledging and giving credit to the people that make the work possible and make life possible. And so it felt, I think we just tried to keep that sort of general idea of what the movie was about and carry it through in terms of how we structured it financially, where, you know, there was no financier took 50% of anything. It was just divvied up and went out to people. And also too, just in how the credits are reflected, and that these are the people who made this possible.
I was really touched by that. I had long had an idea to do that before, and you just beat me to the punch.
Oh, well, I think it'd be great if it started happening more often, you know, because I feel, especially too with streaming, that window can close. And, you know, because sometimes we'll be going, oh, I wonder who, you know, who was working on it. And then the window closes and you're like searching for the remote quickly to open it back up. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, the thing that bothers me the most about streaming is like skip titles.
Right. Exactly.
Like, really? I'm going to skip the titles and get to the story. It's like, you know, and then there's functions on some of these streaming sites is like 1.5 times speed, 2 times speed.
Yeah. I haven't tried that yet.
Well,
I'd be curious to watch a movie in twice the speed it was meant to be watched. But
okay, so this feels like there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Feels like such a personal movie, right? Would you agree?
To a certain extent, I think. I mean, the inception of it, just forgetting to thank a partner at a premiere is something that happened to me. I forgot to thank my wife at premiere of a movie I made, Assassination Nation, and she's, you know, we didn't get into a big blow up fight. We actually had a very calm conversation about it on the ride home and resolved everything before we walked in the front door. But it did make me think about what happens when you forget to acknowledge someone. And I thought it would be interesting if, especially if we're telling a relationship piece that couldn't sort of jump around. It was essentially one location. And it was almost in real time that, you know, I didn't want to get locked into having to always be talking about the relationship. So the idea of a filmmaker seemed to be an interesting entry point, because at times they could be talking about the relationship or the film, which is also an interpretation of Marie's life and part of what she's upset about. So it gives it a number of angles to kind of move around and explore how the characters feel about it. But yeah, it's personal in the sense that I think it's sort of this Socratic dialogue about, you know, about relationships and partnership and collaboration and ego and film and what really ultimately matters in life in a way.
It brings up this idea of the permission to tell other people's stories, and this is what I wanted to ask you about. You know, you make something that does talk about these personal ideas in interviews. How do you feel about talking about personal things?
It's always really hard. It's like it's hard to talk about personal stuff in interviews, and I have a little bit, you know, with Euphoria, you know, because I had a history of, you know, with addiction and stuff, and so sometimes it's like impossible to describe it, you know, without just being like, look, I was an addict and da. But I always feel like you know, it's like I'm a private person, and I'm like, you know, and so it's hard to kind of, it's like, you know, you don't want to turn everything into this sort of analysis, like an analysis session. And there's also a large part of, I mean, what's so wild and beautiful about filmmaking in general is you can take a small thing that happened to you, like forgetting to thank a partner, and then imagine what could erupt out of it if you decided to handle it a different way, if you were a different person, if your partner was a different person. And so it can blossom into its own totally fictional thing, but and then there's always that question of, well, where do you begin and the character starts? And it's always a difficult thing to answer, because I think there's always traces of all of us in all of it. There's traces of me and everything. There's traces of our actors and everything, our producers, our crew members, you know, it bleeds into it. And I think that's what's beautiful is the fact that it is this kind of collaborative art form that's a collision of all of these different identities and experiences, and the life seeps into it.
Mm-hmm. So you are actually trying to find this balance between taking the inspiration from real life or experience and then projecting it onto your imagination and letting it take root.
Totally. I mean, in the same way that, like, if I decide to go to if I were to decide to go to the mall and I'm walking around and suddenly I get this pang of anxiety about like a sniper on a rooftop across from the mall shooting me, it's like you go, and I were to then make a movie about some sort of mall hostage situation, you go, well, is it personal? And you go, well, kind of. I was at the mall and I got worried about it. And then my imagination just went crazy, you know?
So this is where your imagination goes. You said you had an apocalyptic imagination.
To a certain extent, I mean, I struggle with terrible anxiety in that regard. So I'm optimistic about emotional things and then apocalyptic about just the state of the world and the future. It's this odd balance, because I would never say that I don't think I'm cynical. Yeah. I'm just scared.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, you were speaking a little, the central conflict in this story is really about Marie, who feels like Malcolm has represented her life and taken her story. And there's a beautiful moment in it where she says that she wouldn't have given all of that away if she would have known how that feels like, what that feels like. And I just want to get into this idea of what it is to be. I mean, you have this story really about an artist and his muse, right? They're like addicted to this. You feel like Malcolm is drawing all of his energy artistically from her, and that's, I don't know, where does someone have the right to tell a story that's not theirs? And you bring it up like Euphoria, you talk about your drug addiction, whatever challenges you had, as a way almost like you had to say that to be able to have permission to tell that story. So what gives someone permission to tell a story? Can you only tell the stories that you've experienced? I mean, I feel like that's become a really interesting central theme, conflict that's unresolved in your film, and in a good way.
I mean, that's the question. Is I'm not sure that you ever have, either you never have permission or you have all the permission in the world, right? I think it's sort of one and the other, in the sense that I think storytelling in general is sort of like this leap, of faith, in the sense that you believe that some story that comes out of that comes out of you is going to connect to somebody else, right? That someone's going to be sitting across the screen and go and be moved by it and touched by it and think about it, and in the same way that I think we all are by films. And so but the idea, but what gives us the right to have that faith is, I'm not quite sure. Part of it's sort of what gives us the right to believe in our ability to tell a story that connects to others. And then at the same time, even with Euphoria, and I think of things that had, there's large parts of it that had happened to myself. There's pieces of other characters that have happened. There's also situations that I've been in when I was younger that were where I was in the middle of a very scary or strange experience. And you go, well, whose right is it to tell that story? It may have been as much mine as any of the other people who were there. And so I think, but what I think and I think it also gets to a certain feeling that I have at times about, and it comes just from a personal point about just filmmaking, which is when you don't always succeed in telling. Let's say you take a personal thing like addiction, right, and Euphoria, and there's certain aspects of Euphoria that I go back and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have done that a little bit better, because then it might have been more understood, or it was misinterpreted this way. And so there's a feeling that I've kind of taken a part of myself and put it in something that I'm not 100%, that I may have failed at to a certain extent. So it feels like, so I very much relate to Marie in that regard. And I think that's sort of what I was thinking about, is what happens when your voice or your experience is interpreted. Let's say I were to take that situation and just interpret it by somebody else, and now I can't examine it myself in the way that I may want to. I can't repeat myself in a way that I want to. I think these are these kind of fundamental kind of questions that and they're kind of, they're moral questions, not just cinematic ones. What's the moral like the idea of a muse, right? Artist and muse, like what's the morality of that situation? And also too, just on a broader level, is she even a muse in that regard, or is she actually the kind of core gravitational pull, and it's her voice, not his? I think of it in that way. I think that there is an interpretation of this film that's very much sort of that's a very valid one I actually might agree with, that if she were to walk out that door, he would never make another film.
You agree with that?
I don't know. There's a part of me that wants to believe that.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. It's like I also flip-flop every
I think
time I think about it.
I think that's beautiful, to be able to write characters that are open enough to that interpretation, and to, as a writer, to be able to offer some opinions of the characters to the audience, or to define the characters in the audience. I find sometimes in movies, people are so precisely defined, and I don't know anyone in real life that's so precisely defined. I feel like we're all humans, and we're all kind of messy, and we're all contradictions, and there's multiple truths to any of our.
There's, like, I always love characters who are wrong, like who say things that are literally untrue.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by them, and I love characters that like make a bold statement about something, and then there's just sort of one thread pulled out, and they go, oh yeah, no, you're right about that, and just take it away, because it's such a human thing of like, you have an idea and you think, well, this is the idea, and then suddenly someone just pokes a hole and you go, oh yeah, no, it's never mind, I don't believe that.
Yes, you are challenging the likability clause of characters. And what always drove me crazy in Hollywood when I was first trying to get things going was, I would have people tell me, they'd read my script and they would talk about how the characters weren't sympathetic enough, which I always took as such like, who wants to be sympathetic? Empathetic, I can understand, to empathize with someone, but people, they have to have their flaws, and it's this likability clause. And I think your film, I mean, how do you feel about that? If people say that your characters can be unlikable?
I mean, it's of no consequence in that, like, I don't take it as an actual note. I go, okay. I mean, it's one thing. It's like, if someone is so, no, I don't even give a, there's like, take HUD, for instance. Paul Newman's character in HUD is one of the most terrible human beings ever depicted on screen, but I'm fucking fascinated by him. And I think I don't know why I don't think movies should have to be about people that you like. I think you have to care about the world of it. And you have to understand them, but you don't have to like them.
Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you about, I'm going to jump the rails here.
Go for it.
The house. Did you know that was the house you were going to shoot in while you were writing?
No, I wrote it. I mean, look, I kind of, Zendaya and I were talking. A couple days later, I talked to my producer, Kevin Turin. I talked to my producer, and wife, Ash, and just thinking about it. And then I just started writing, and I didn't even, it's one of the things I struggle with the most is scene direction when I'm writing, particularly when I don't know the locations, because I'll spend like 4 hours deciding if a character like looks left or looks right or where's the bathroom. And then I go, I don't have a location. It doesn't matter. So I try to be very spare with it. And this, I just started writing dialogue, and I had no idea what the location was going to look like. And I think in the end, we looked at probably about 1,500 houses all throughout California. There was one in Los Angeles we loved, but we couldn't get a permit to shoot here. And then finally, my production designer, Michael Gracely, was really brilliant. He said, why don't we just look at architects that we like and just go through the houses that they've built? And we found this architect, Jonathan Feldman, we went through the houses and then just knocked on the doors of the people that lived there and asked if we could shoot. And when we saw that house, it was like game over. Because I think that's always the thing you're looking for is depth and space and different angles and how to basically let it unfold over the course of the film, because we don't want to, this movie would get old very quickly if we don't allow it to kind of slowly reveal itself.
Yes, there's all the frames within the frames. There's the glass. I also found that what was going on between them was such a private conversation. It's interesting to set that in a glass house.
Yeah, I mean, that you want to, it's part of, when we were shooting, Marcel, who's our cinematographer and kind of my closest collaborator, we had this kind of whole plan about how we were going to shoot the movie, right? It was going to be all dolly and sort of like a Preminger-esque thing with this kind of choreography, long takes and everything. We shot the whole first day. And I said to Marcel, and you can still see there's a couple of shots in there, like the push-ins on JD at the bar when he's drinking. And I said to Marcel, I was like, this is like a whiskey commercial. What are we doing? There's no fucking life in it, and he was like, I completely agree. We've totally fucked up, this thing. We're in the car. We're like beside ourselves day one. We go back. I said, let's sleep on it. We'll wake up. We wake up in the morning. We're like, okay, we're going to shoot the whole thing handheld, whole movie handheld. I tell the actors, I say, we're throwing everything out. And we did like 30 takes of the first 10 pages the day before. John David says, you mean like everything? I was like, everything. It's just not the right feeling. So we threw out all of the other stuff. And then we shot the whole day handheld. Now we had been in quarantine, so no one had really exercised. It was like standing on it. Marcel's got 1,000-foot mag on his shoulder. By the end of the day, he's dripping in sweat. And I look at him and I kind of shake my head. He shakes his head at the same time. And we know that we're throwing out day two. But I didn't want to tell the actors. I was like, can't tell the actors.
Did you keep a moment of that though in that first shot when you cut inside of Z? Yes. with the macaroni and cheese and tilts up to her? It's the first shot inside. It's a handheld shot.
The first shot is it's outside their pool. Then we cut to the hallway and it's this kind of slow push in.
Yes,
that's what we had shot that first day. And then, so we decided, let's just jump to this outside shot where, she's there, which was a little connecting piece that we knew we wanted to do. And as we were shooting it, we had one key grip, God bless him, Jeff Kunkel, on this shoot. And, that was it. So he's building the track. We go outside and suddenly we get a sense of the space in the world, and we see him, JD, coming in, dancing, having the time of his life. You see that he's in one world. Marie comes in. You see that she's in a totally separate world. And now you understand that there's like a certain objectivity that we're looking at, and you also feel like we're eavesdropping on this private conversation in this house. The windows kind of made it, and it is somewhat theatrical, the design of the movie. It's not a totally real argument in that way, and it felt like a stage. And I said, I think this is how we shoot it, Marcel. And he's like, great, but the fucking sun's coming up in an hour.
Wow.
And so what do we do? So we're all out there just laying the dolly track, trying to get this thing going. I tell I'm like, JD, just pretend your legs are wheels. We'll follow you, jump in the window, keep going in circles. Marie, come out. And then we did 3 takes of it. And the third take is the one that's in the movie.
Wow.
There was literally like the sun was coming up. We had like 3 feet left in the mag, and I'm screaming at Z, pick up the mac and cheese, picks it up. We rolled out,
Yes. The one of the best parts about shooting film, I feel like, is that urgency that it creates. I feel like every time I load a mag of film, it's as if someone has lit the dynamite, and we only are alive for this long. Once that wick hits, we're dead. It's over. We got to get it before it blows.
I love that analogy. That's such a great way of thinking about it, because there is that pressure of that this is finite. It's not endless. It is that we got to be. It provides that structure and a focus, I think, to everybody.
Actors,
know that it's talking. Yeah.
How do you think it affects actors?
I think actors are acutely aware of the fact that it's on film and we have to reload, and it's not going to be easy. It's not, and so it's and just, we're not going to sit around and just fuck around. It's if we go off, cut, start again. I think it helps structure performance, and also too, just this stock that we were using, the XX stock from Kodak, which is, I think, hasn't really been redone or touched since the 50s. It's like we really have to choreograph it, because we have to light it. I mean, you can't walk. If you walk off your mark a little bit, you're falling into total darkness. And so it really forced us to block it and choreograph it in a way where we kind of knew where we were all going. But still, this little bit of life seeps in and mistakes happen. And those are the things you're grateful for.
So do you rehearse, or do you shoot the rehearsals? How do you do it? Because I was really impressed with the blocking. I mean, to be able to string out a narrative in one location in one night, almost real time, is a feat. There's not a lot of filmmakers who've made a successful real time movie like this is. So how do you block that?
I mean, we would rehearse it first, just show up, and we just start kind of going through it. What feels right. There's always there's what works emotionally. Right. And then.
Are you shooting these rehearsals though?
No, no, we just sit there and we start reading the lines. I mean, we had no first AD, no script supervisor, it was just, we had no schedule. We just shot the thing in order, and we'd show up every day and be like, where did we leave off? Because it was such a small crew. And so we go, oh yeah, it's that kitchen scene where he's going around the bar, because we were literally slating just like day 4. That's how we would slate.
Wow.
But so we try to figure out what works best for the kind of the emotion, and also just a little bit of like, what rooms haven't we used, or what spaces haven't we used a bit. And so then we would do that, and then we do that, kind of refine it a little bit, and then shoot it. And then once we shot it a couple of times, we would then go, oh wait, there's something that's not looking right, because reality doesn't really matter once it's on film. Suddenly it's like you go, yeah, it might be really nice to just stand across from him and have a conversation, but it's there's no energy, and it's starting to feel stagnant. So then sometimes, like for instance, the review where Malcolm's outside screaming at the trees, we shot that we blocked it and then shot it for, I would say, 6 hours of one night. And towards the end of the night, I felt like we were too close on him, and we couldn't understand the absurdity of him getting this great review and losing his mind.
Yes.
Yeah, that it's pure comedy. And so I was like, oh, we need to be wider in this. And so knowing that, we came back and reblocked everything the next day, and we're able to knock it off really quickly because we had found the rhythm of the performance and stuff, but we just needed to be further back from it so we could see how small he is in this world, raging
Yes.
about the greatest review ever.
Okay, on to reviews. Do you read your reviews?
I have, not all of them, but I've read quite a few reviews on this film. I've shied away from it, but I think I might read reviews in a couple of weeks. I just need a little bit more distance.
I did the same thing with my last film. I was like, I'm not going to read any reviews. And then people, like my producer, started sending me, look what this person said. And he would send me the most like scathing review and like put ha 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 ha. And so I was like, dude, okay, now how helpful is this to my heart and soul? But I thought it was interesting, though. I don't want to give away the film, but there's a sequence where they are.
We can give away the film. It doesn't matter.
Well, there's a conversation about what one of the characters wants the other character to say about them, what they want to be said about them. And there's also a big sequence of mirrors. And I thought that, like, as the character is talking about what they want to hear, a lot of your film is about what I think we want other people to say about us. And in relationships, we can all have these moments, and we can, someone can respond to us in a way that's hurtful to us. And if only they would have said this, it would have made me feel better. But then you got, the critics saying things. And I don't know, can you talk about that idea of narcissism in the mirror and talking to yourself, and how much, as an artist, you have to have that quality. You have to be able to believe in yourself.
Right. But it's also this really fine line of like, if you believe in yourself too much, then you're an insane person and you're living in a completely fictional world, which is, I think, kind of at the heart of what the movie is about. And from what I understand is there's been some, from what I understand about certain reviews of the piece, is that they're taking it as sort of an endorsement of the ego of the artist, as opposed to what I think it actually is, which is a complete evisceration of the ego of the artist. Which I thought would be evident in the fact that he's not railing against a bad review. He's railing against a great review.
Yes.
And what it exposes about him is his total insecurity and narcissism as an artist, and this feeling of wanting an art form, film, to be understood 1000% exactly how you intend it as the maker of it by everyone who watches it. And which is something that I think we all want to be understood, but there's a fine line between, but we also all have our own interpretations of movies and things we like. And so it's this funny duality. And I thought that it was a great way to kind of to sort of explore the fight and the struggle and the kind of, and I think what happens to a lot of people who get very sort of successful as filmmakers or even actors, which is you're suddenly surrounding yourself, and it's something that Marie says to him later, if you steamroll everyone in your midst, you're going to end up creating a fictional reality, and which in my mind is the death of any kind of artistic inspiration, because then you have nothing to draw on but your own your own kind of inflated sense of yourself. I think that's kind of what it's about. But what's been interesting, I guess, is not just the mirrors between the characters and what they're feeling, but also the mirrors in the reaction to the movie. As it's like, as there's been like, because that scene has garnered a lot of talk and to a certain extent a lot of controversy, right? And people speculating, well, Sam must be talking about a real person and a real thing. You're going, no, but it's interesting how everyone is sort of centering themselves into the narrative of it and seeing themselves or feeling acknowledged and feeling like, oh, this is a part of my, this is addressed to me. This is, and which I think is the kind of fascinating part of just all films in general. Is how we see ourselves reflected. But what's happened specifically with this one, because it's about a filmmaker, because I also happen to be a filmmaker. Although I would say that I share as much in common with both characters. And maybe my heart lies with Marie, who I think by the end of the movie renders this very loud, kind of chaotic, emotional, narcissistic character completely speechless for 20 minutes, with just a grounded, this is what, it's basically saying the critics' one issue with you as a filmmaker is my issue with you as a human being and a partner. And this is what life is about. This is what I want. This is what you're missing. And this is ultimately, if you can't hear critique, if you can't listen to it, you're not just going to grow as an artist, but you're not going to grow as a human being.
Beautiful.
And I think that's kind of what the movie's about.
Beautiful, man. It takes, well said. Well said. Okay, let me ask you just this filmmaker question. What are the other movies, or like a fan, I should say a fan, like an audience member question. What are the other movies that exist in this kind of world of, because I said earlier that not many filmmakers have achieved this. Are there other films that you look to for inspiration?
Yeah, look, I don't want to like fan out, but I think, you made one of them that had an enormous impression on me. Blue Valentine is incredible fucking feat, and just in really, really extraordinary work. And then I think also too, like maybe even movies that they're sort of, I just love movies about power imbalance. And I think Joseph Losey's The Servant is one of my favorite examples of that. It's such an odd, kind of fascinating push and pull between characters. Scenes from a Marriage, obviously, is a movie that made a really big impact on me, or a series that made a big impact. It's funny because there's been some, I've heard some sort of things about saying like, that it's sort of inspired in some way by sort of Cassavetes, but Cassavetes was, in a really honest and odd way, someone who never really entered my mind when thinking about it, because his films are there's so much life in them, and there's so much about the kind of unpredictability of filmmaking and the merging of things that it was, and this is kind of scripted in a very sort of theatrical way. It's sort of, I was thinking about like Tennessee Williams. I don't know. There's also like, for some reason, it just popped into my head, and it's a movie that I've thought a lot about. Room at the Top, with Simone Signoret, is a really interesting movie. But just it's it has that kind of, it is sort of it's a play in some regards, at least in terms of the dialogue. It's this like I never thought of it sort of in a 3-act structure. I thought of it as kind of like I was just trying to dig characters into a hole every fucking day that I wrote. Like, what's the worst shit that they can say, and what can they never come back from?
Yes.
And then how can I dig them out of the hole the next day? And that's just how I wrote the whole piece, you know?
Apocalyptic.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, let me ask you one thing too. We're running out of time here, but television. So how do you think, because I know when I did my television show, I was so excited to be able to do a 20-minute scene.
Yeah.
And I couldn't wait to just do, and I overwrote this scene to 21 pages. And I was like, I'm going to shoot a 21-page scene. Because in a movie, you really don't have the real estate for that. I mean, you can, you can, I mean, traditionally in a movie, you
right.
It's so much a part of it, but you were making movies, then you went to TV where you have more kind of this different space, different cadence, can have a different cadence, even though your TV show is very cinematic. How did that change? How did your work on TV change you as a movie maker? And, or are they the same thing?
No, I think it's a really interesting question. I think before I did television, kind of I directed 2 movies, and they were very much like, I need to say everything. I felt like I had to say everything, and which I think is not always a good thing, you know. And some of the things I get sort of self-critical about when looking back at certain things. And I think what happened with television is I sort of approached it from the standpoint of, okay, I've got this pilot where you sort of set up the world, but then there's these other 7 episodes. And I kind of looked at them as sort of individual exercises. And, you know, and so I thought, okay, like, how do we take this sort of crazy expressionistic, I don't know, show about, you know, these teenagers and addiction and stuff like that, and like, I don't know, wrap it in the kind of like a 90s like Fincher-esque thriller. And then, you know, I would try that, and then episode 3 comes along and I'm like, oh, okay, so how can I take, like, let's play with tone. How can I write an episode that's just like a really deeply hilarious and then also completely tragic, and just mush them up together and see, like, what can a show hold in an hour? And I would sort of approach it from these sort of exercises in a way of like, how can we just tell a story with almost no dialogue and just montage? And I would and so it gave me a sort of a flexibility that and a room to explore. I think in the same way that you're saying, like, oh, here's just like a 20-page, like, I've never been able to just sit in a conversation and deal with the ebbs and flows and arcs of it, which is like a fascinating thing. I just recently, I was like, what if during COVID, like, what if we just do an episode of Euphoria that just takes place at a diner? It's just 2 people talking. And I think, like, that's the beautiful part about TV, and something that really excites me is films always, they always have to be sort of on train tracks, you know, and headed somewhere. And you don't have the room or the freedom to kind of, I don't know, explore the things that you want to, or take the digressions that you want to. Like, you may suddenly go, I really like this character and this thing. Let's just go into it for a little bit and see what happens. And the audience knows we'll get back to all the other stuff they care about. You know, it's in some ways you're able to be more experimental, which I kind of really appreciate. And then obviously there's other complications, and, you know, it's just such a hard, long process, you know, and it's tired. You directed all the episodes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it runs you down, you know?
Yeah. I never had a better time in my life, though. I mean, it felt
Me
like
too. Yeah.
It felt like a 116-day vacation, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about being on set, where it's just like, it's the only time in my life where I have no anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just so much fun, and I love just the collaborative aspect of being on set and figuring things out. But it's like, you know, you get so wrapped up in the world, and you get to play and experiment with these things. But it's like, when I remember finishing season 1, and I tried to take like a 2-week vacation, and I just couldn't focus on any, I was just so discombobulated. And then it was like, all right, write season 2. And there was just an emptiness and that I had. And it was hard to kind of imagine going back into it in that way. But I really loved working in TV, and I loved working with HBO. It was so freeing, and they're kind of encouraging and wonderful in that regard. So I'm really grateful for it, because it's this kind of fun, I don't know, sandbox in a way.
Yeah.
Did you feel the same way?
I felt the same way. I felt like I feel like every time I make a movie, my ambition almost gets the best of me in a movie. And I feel like you say, the train is going, and there's so much I want to put in a movie. And what ends up happening, what has ended up happening, is that I would start to just like have to fill up so many, when I was doing Light Between Oceans, I had like, my third act had something like 45 scenes.
Right.
So if you're, but the third act can be maybe 30 minutes. And so that means each one of those scenes has to be less than a minute, has to be like 45 seconds. And so you're no longer servicing character, you're only servicing plot in your editing. And so no matter what you came up with on set, you can't have, an extended third act in a movie, because you got to get to the end. And
it's a race. Yeah.
It's a race. And so I felt like I'm interested to go back to a movie after having done television and kind of released some of that, that searching, that kind of just curiosity. I feel like TV is really good for the curiosity, to just go find these different tributaries and see where they lead you,
Totally. I always think about what's interesting also too about what you're saying is, I think that there's that exploration, or the freedom that you feel as a filmmaker working in television, I think also speaks to kind of culturally why we're fascinated with television. Like when people are talking about characters that they love, they're almost never characters from films anymore. You know what I mean? Like no one's talking about the Travis Bickles. We don't have them in film as much. Or in American Psycho, or anything from the last, throughout all of cinema. There's just those characters they were talking. It's like the Tony Sopranos, the Walter Whites, it's like all of the kind of the great characters migrated from film to TV. And I think it's because there's sort of a freedom there that that audiences, I don't know if it's filmmakers, or it's also the audience's expectations have changed a little bit, that it's become this sort of bigger spectacle, or this thrill ride. Is that, I don't know, is that
you get to live with the characters. They become like your family members, especially on a show like HBO. We both had the experience of HBO. I was really fascinated that it was, or intrigued by the fact that the episodes would come out once a week, and people would come back to visit these characters in their lives. Like they would go to their parents' house for dinner, for spaghetti and meatballs on a Sunday, and so you go spend time with this family again, and then you go about your life, and you go back to this house every Sunday. And the one question I have about TV and film, though, is like, is TV expendable? Do people? I think with Euphoria they do. I think people watch that over and over again. But like, in Bergman for sure, Fanny and Alexander, you go back and watch that. But does TV, like films? I've watched. You brought up Travis Bickle. I've watched that movie 100, whatever, maybe 40 times.
Yeah.
I go back and watch it. I can't watch The Wire 40 times because it's 60 hours.
Yeah, that may be true. Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. But I also think at the same time, how many films recently, or in the last 15 years or something, do you go back and you watch sort of obsessively in that way? Like I do think that there's also something that's happened in film, where film has also felt a little bit more expendable. But I think that that's all I think that that's all sort of film and television is felt a little bit more disposable because we do live in a bit of a kind of, it's almost like what's next? What else you got here?
Exactly.
There's it's made in sweatshops or something.
Skip the title,
It just,
man.
yeah, skip the titles. It comes down the conveyor belt. Boom, boom, boom. What do you think? It was okay. Moving on.
Yes.
It's like, I think that there's a lot of that. I think it's hard to create those. There's so much out there too. There's like thousands of people are always telling me like, what do you mean you haven't seen that movie or that show? I go, I know. It's just, I haven't had the time yet,
I know it's a commitment.
It's over. And there's also a lot of, I think, shows that get really good once you get invested in it. It's like after a certain number of hours, which I think speaks to maybe why all the great characters have migrated to television. I think just to wrap it back around it's the likability factor, right? Once you've spent enough time, you've spent 3 hours, even if they were unlikable for the first 3 hours, you now have a level of intimacy that you forgive their unlikability. You go, all right, I'm with this person,
Yes, and they can change and they can grow and they can become new. Your empathy starts to can grow for them over time as you understand them more.
Totally.
All right, first off, it's awesome to meet you. I appreciate the risk you take in your art, and congratulations on this film. It's been a real pleasure, and I can't wait. And I think I'll speak for all the audience. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Well, thank you so much. It was lovely to talk to you. As I've told you before, but I'll tell you again, I'm in awe of your work, and I just this was just a real honor to talk to you. So thank you, and thank you to the DGA for having us.
Yes, yes, we'll go meet each other when this COVID is all done. Okay,
I'd love that.
Your apocalyptic thinking. One last thing: how much longer do we have in COVID?
Oh, don't ask me. I don't want to be I don't want my anxieties on record.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. So,
okay. Yeah. Stay safe.
Hey, you too, brother.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. If you'd like to hear more, The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay tuned in the coming weeks as we bring you discussions of films from Miranda July, David Fincher, and Lee Daniels. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.